Who let this filthy cripple in here?
Brenda blocked the wheelchair with her high heel.
Sterling Grand is for the elite, not lowlifes like you. I have a reservation. Allison Moore.
Brenda threw her head back and laughed.
A nobody in a tattered army jacket? With a reservation? Funniest thing all week.
Guests stared. A bellboy froze. No one said a word.
I want to see your manager.
Brenda's smile vanished.
Giving me orders?
She leaned down.
Get out, you useless cripple. You can't even walk. You're nothing.
She grabbed the wheelchair and shoved. Allison didn't scream, didn't beg, head high, calm, unflinching. But the manager was already sprinting down the hallway. And what he was about to shout would make Brenda regret every word for the rest of her life. Have you ever watched someone's world collapse the moment they realize the person they humiliated holds their career in one hand because you are about to comment if you've been judged before someone knew your name hit like? And let me take you back to where it all started. The morning sun pressed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of a penthouse apartment in downtown Savannah. Allison Moore sat in her wheelchair by the glass watching the city wake up below. She held a coffee mug in both hands. The steam curled and disappeared against the light. She was 34 years old, black, 5'6" when she used to stand. The last time she stood was 8 years ago in a forward operating base in Helmand Province, Afghanistan, third tour. She was 26, a staff sergeant leading a 4-person team on a casualty evacuation when the IED detonated 12 feet from the vehicle. The blast threw her 15 feet. She woke up in a military hospital in Landstuhl, Germany, with titanium rods in her spine and a doctor explaining in a voice that was careful and kind and final that she would never walk again. She didn't cry that day. She cried 6 weeks later in a VA rehabilitation center in Virginia when she dropped a plastic cup and couldn't bend down to pick it up. That was the day it became real. After her honorable discharge, Allison received disability compensation and veterans benefits. She used every dollar she was entitled to. She enrolled at the Wharton School of Business on a full veterans scholarship and earned her master's degree in business administration in 18 months, finishing at the top of her cohort while learning to navigate a campus that hadn't been designed for a wheelchair. Then she started investing. Commercial real estate. Small properties first, a strip mall in Delaware, a medical office building in New Jersey. She studied lease structures the way she had once studied terrain maps. She read balance sheets the way she had read after-action reports. And she was disciplined, the kind of discipline that comes not from business school, but from 3 deployments, 2 Bronze Stars, and a body that had been rebuilt from the waist up. Within 5 years, her portfolio was worth more than most hedge funds would admit to envying. Within 8, she had acquired a controlling 60% stake in Sterling Grand Hotels, one of the most prestigious luxury hotel chains on the East Coast. 12 properties across 8 states, annual revenue north of $400 million. Nobody knew her face. She ran the company through her attorneys and the board of directors. She never appeared in press releases. She never attended ribbon cuttings. She never posed for magazine profiles. The only photograph of Allison Moore in the entire Sterling Grand organization hung in a locked boardroom at the corporate headquarters in New York. A single portrait behind glass with a brass nameplate that read, Allison Moore, majority stakeholder 60%. Today, she had a reservation at the newest Sterling Grand property. The Savannah flagship opened just 2 months ago. She had booked a weekend suite under her personal name, no VIP designation, no advance notice to staff. She wanted to see her newest hotel the way a guest would see it, the way any guest would see it. She set down her coffee, folded her faded army jacket across her lap, and wheeled herself toward the door. Sterling Grand Savannah occupied a restored antebellum building in the heart of the historic district. The lobby was a showcase. Italian marble floors polished to a mirror shine, a crystal chandelier imported from Vienna, fresh white lilies arranged in a cut-glass vase on the front desk. The air smelled of jasmine and old money. A grand piano sat in the corner, played every evening by a local conservatory student. The hotel had been fully staffed for 2 months, though most of the team was new. Housekeeping, kitchen, bellhops, all hired during the opening rush. But one member of the staff was not new at all. Howard Bennett, 52, was the head of guest services. He had been with Sterling Grand for 8 years, originally stationed at the New York flagship, where he had managed front desk operations, trained incoming staff, and, most relevantly, served coffee, arranged chairs, and set up presentations for every quarterly board meeting held in the corporate boardroom. The boardroom with the locked door, the boardroom with the photograph. Howard knew Allison Moore's face the way a church deacon knows the pastor's. He had never spoken to her, he had never been introduced. But he had stood 3 feet from that portrait hundreds of times, and he had dusted the frame himself. He had been transferred to Savannah to help build the new property's service culture from scratch. He was good at it, patient, thorough. The kind of man who noticed when a guest's water glass was 2/3 empty and refilled it without being asked. Behind the front desk that morning was someone very different. Brenda Crawford was 28, white blonde with red lipstick and gel nails that she touched up twice per shift. She was on her 3rd day. Hired during the opening rush when Greg Patterson, the hotel's general manager, needed warm bodies behind the counter more than he needed references. He hadn't checked hers. If he had, he would have found that she had been fired from her previous 2 jobs, a boutique hotel in Charleston and a spa resort in Hilton Head, for the same reason: hostile and discriminatory behavior toward guests. Brenda had a particular talent for sorting people. She could assess a guest in under 3 seconds: clothes, shoes, posture, skin color, and assign them a tier. Top tier got the smile, the eye contact, the warm welcome. Everyone else got the minimum, or less. 2 days into her employment, a Latino guest had filed a written complaint about her attitude. She had ignored him at the front desk for 12 minutes while cheerfully serving white guests who arrived after him. The complaint sat in Greg Patterson's email inbox, marked as read, but buried under a stack of opening week logistics. He hadn't addressed it. He hadn't mentioned it to Brenda. He hadn't even forwarded it to Howard. It was still sitting there, unread in any meaningful sense, when Allison Moore rolled through the front doors. The automatic doors slid open, and Allison Moore rolled into the lobby of Sterling Grand Savannah. The air hit her first. Cool, clean, scented with white lilies. Chandeliers threw soft gold light across the marble floor. A grand piano sat silent in the corner. 2 couples occupied the lounge area to the right, speaking in low voices over espresso. A bellboy in a pressed uniform pushed a brass luggage cart toward the elevator. Everything whispered wealth, taste, belonging. Allison wheeled herself forward. The faded army jacket sat folded on her lap. Her faded black hoodie was zipped to her collarbone. Her sneakers, the ones she wore out of habit even though her feet hadn't touched the ground in 8 years, were scuffed white with a small hole near the left toe. A canvas backpack hung from the back of her wheelchair, half zipped, holding a paperback novel and a phone charger. She approached the front desk. Brenda Crawford was behind the counter, head down, painting a fresh coat of clear polish over her gel nails. The smell of acetone mixed with the lilies. She didn't look up when the wheelchair stopped in front of her. She finished, her pinky finger blew on it once and then raised her eyes. Her gaze started at the wheels, moved up to the faded jacket, the hoodie, the face. Her expression changed, the way a door closes, not slowly, not gently, but with a clear and deliberate click. She did not smile. She did not stand. She did not say, "Welcome." "Can I help you?" The words were technically right, the tone was not. It was the tone you'd use on someone blocking your parking spot. "Good afternoon," Allison said. Her voice was even, polite, the voice of someone who had spent years learning that calm was the most powerful weapon in any room. "I have a reservation. The name is Allison Moore." Brenda did not touch the keyboard. She didn't glance at the screen. She leaned back in her chair, crossed her arms, and looked at Allison the way you'd look at a stain on a white tablecloth. "Are you sure you're at the right place?" "I'm sure. Because rooms here start at $450 a night." Brenda let the number hang in the air like a velvet rope. "And I'm looking at you and I'm thinking, maybe the Red Roof Inn on Highway 16 might be more your speed." The bellboy near the elevator slowed his step. One of the couples on the lounge sofa turned their heads. Allison reached into her hoodie pocket, pulled out her phone, opened the confirmation email, and held the screen up toward Brenda. "Here's my booking confirmation. Reservation number, check-in date, room type, it's all there." Brenda glanced at the phone for less than a second. Then she pushed it away with 2 fingers, the way you'd push away a plate of food you didn't order. "I don't know what that is. Our system doesn't show your name." She hadn't typed a single letter. At that moment, the lobby doors opened again. A white couple in their 50s walked in, the man in a navy blazer, the woman in pearls and a cream-colored coat. Brenda's body language transformed completely. She stood up, straightened her blouse, smiled wide, warm, the kind of smile you'd give a long-lost friend. "Welcome to Sterling Grand. So wonderful to have you. Let me check you right in." She processed their reservation in under 2 minutes, laughing at the husband's joke about the drive from Atlanta, complimenting the wife's bracelet, handing over the key cards with both hands like she was presenting a gift. Allison sat 3 feet away, watching, waiting. The confirmation email still glowing on her phone screen. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. The contrast was already screaming. The couple walked toward the elevator. Dunn's smile vanished like a switch had been flipped. She turned back to Allison. "You're still here?" "I'm still here. I'd like you to check my reservation, please." Brenda sighed loud, theatrical, designed to be heard by everyone in the lobby. She tapped 3 keys on the keyboard. Maybe 4. Then looked up. "Nothing. No reservation under that name. I don't know what to tell you." "Could you try again? Maybe check the spelling?" "I checked." Brenda leaned forward across the counter. Her voice dropped low, the kind of low that carries, the kind meant for an audience. "Look, I'm going to be straight with you. I don't know who told you that you could afford this place. I don't know what website you found or what coupon you printed out, but this," she gestured at the lobby with one long gel nail, "this isn't for people like you. It never was, and honestly, you're making my guests uncomfortable just sitting here." The words landed like stones in still water. The bellboy stopped completely, one hand frozen on the luggage cart. The couple on the lounge sofa stared openly. A woman near the piano covered her mouth but didn't speak. No one moved to help. The silence in the lobby was the kind that pressed against your ears. The silence of people who saw something wrong and chose to look away. Allison lowered her phone. She placed both hands on her lap, one on top of the other, and looked at Brenda with an expression that held no anger, no surprise, and no defeat. The expression of someone who had heard these words before, in different rooms, from different mouths, and had learned long ago that the people who said them always told you more about themselves than about you. "I'd like to speak with a manager, please." Brenda's mouth twitched. The request bothered her, not because it was aggressive, but because it was calm. Calm was harder to fight than anger. Calm didn't give you anything to push back against. She recovered quickly, crossed her arms. "The manager is busy, with actual guests." She tilted her head. "I'm going to ask you one more time. Leave, or I call security." Allison didn't move, didn't raise her voice, didn't look away. "I'll wait for the manager." Something shifted behind Brenda's eyes, a flicker, a tightening. The look of someone who expected the other person to fold and they didn't. In Brenda's world, people like this always folded. They lowered their eyes. They turned their chairs around. They left quietly through the same door they came in. This woman wasn't leaving, and that made Brenda furious. She stepped out from behind the counter, heels clicking on the marble, sharp, deliberate, each step a declaration. She walked around the desk and stood directly in front of Allison's wheelchair. Close enough that Allison could smell her perfume, something floral and aggressive, layered over the chemical sweetness of nail polish. Brenda looked down at her, literally down, hands on hips. "Let me make this very clear." Her voice rose enough for the whole lobby to hear. "You don't have a reservation. You don't have the money, and you don't have the right to sit here and waste my time." She pointed at the army jacket on Allison's lap. That raggedy little army costume doesn't impress anyone here. You think because you wore a uniform, you're special? You're not. You're just a broke woman in a broken chair who wandered into the wrong building. The bellboy looked at the floor. The couple on the sofa exchanged a glance but stayed silent. A businessman who had just walked through the door paused, briefcase in hand, watching the scene unfold. Allison's jaw tightened, barely, just for a moment. The only crack in her composure. Her fingers pressed together on her lap. She could feel her pulse in her wrists. Not from fear, from memory. She had sat in rooms where people tried to make her feel small before. VA offices where clerks spoke to her like she was a child. Courtrooms where her disability claim was questioned by men who had never heard a gunshot outside of a movie theater. Job interviews where the conversation ended the moment the interviewer saw the wheelchair. This was nothing new. But it still cut. "I served 3 tours overseas," Allison said quietly. Not to convince Brenda, not to prove anything, just to say it out loud in this room because it was true. "I was injured serving this country. I have a confirmed reservation at this hotel. That's all I'm asking you to honor." Brenda stared at her for a long, cold moment. Then she smiled, not with warmth, not with cruelty, but with something worse, complete and total dismissal. The kind of smile that says you've already been erased. "Sweetheart, I don't care if you served on the moon. You're not staying here." She leaned in so close Allison could see the hairline cracks in her lipstick, the mascara flaking at the edges. "Now be a good little cripple and roll yourself out, before things get ugly." She turned on her heel, walked back behind the counter and picked up the phone. "Security, to the front desk. We have a situation." Brenda hung up the phone and crossed her arms. She tilted her chin toward Allison like a judge delivering a sentence that had already been decided. "Security is on the way. I'd suggest you start rolling." Allison said nothing. She placed her hands flat on the armrests of her wheelchair and waited. The lobby felt like a held breath. The bellboy had disappeared around the corner. The couple on the lounge sofa pretended to study their phones. The businessman with the briefcase took a seat near the window, angling his body toward the front desk, watching but not close enough to be involved. 2 minutes passed. Then the staff door beside the elevator opened and Tony Wells walked out. He was 35, broad-shouldered, 6'2", with a crew cut and a Sterling Grand security badge clipped to his belt. His uniform was pressed, his posture straight, his face, the professional blank that people in security learn to maintain. He looked at Brenda first, then at Allison. "What's going on here?" Brenda stepped out from behind the counter, one hand on her hip, the other gesturing toward Allison's wheelchair. "This woman has been loitering in the lobby for the past 15 minutes. She claims she has a reservation, but our system shows nothing under her name. I've asked her to leave 3 times, she refused." Brenda paused, then lowered her voice, just enough to sound concerned rather than cruel. "Honestly, I think she may be confused, or offer medication." Tony turned to Allison. His tone was firm, rehearsed, but polite. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to cooperate. If there's no reservation under your name, we can't accommodate you. I'd be happy to help you find alternative accommodations nearby." "There is a reservation," Allison said. Her voice remained level, measured. "She didn't check. She typed 3 keys and told me nothing was there. I showed her my confirmation email. She pushed my phone away." Tony glanced at Brenda. Brenda shrugged, quick, dismissive, the kind of shrug that slides a lie under a door. "I checked, twice, there's nothing." She hadn't checked once. Tony shifted his weight. He looked back at Allison, then at Brenda, and Allison could see the calculation behind his eyes, the quick arithmetic of who to believe. A receptionist who spoke with authority, a black woman in a wheelchair wearing a faded hoodie. The math was simple. It shouldn't have been, but it was. Brenda circled around to stand beside Tony. She raised her voice, not a shout, but loud enough to turn the lobby into an audience. "Look at her, Tony. Look!" She pointed at Allison with her full hand fingers spread. "The raggedy jacket! The busted-up wheelchair! The smell! You think someone who looks like that can afford $4.50 a night? She probably sleeps under an overpass and wandered in because the AC is free. The words echoed off the marble. A woman near the elevator stopped mid-stride. The businessman lowered his phone. The couple on the sofa looked up but said nothing. The lobby was full of witnesses and completely empty of courage. She told me she served in the military. Brenda air-quoted the words with her gel nails. Served. Right. You know how many people come in here with stories? Last week it was a guy saying he knew the owner. Week before that, somebody tried to use a fake credit card at the bar. She shook her head. I'm just trying to protect this hotel. The young man near the piano lifted his phone. The red dot of a recording light appeared on his screen. He didn't say a word. The camera was already doing the talking. Tony hesitated. Something flickered across his face, the kind of hesitation that comes before a decision you know you might regret. Then he made it. He walked behind Allison's wheelchair and placed both hands on the push handles. Ma'am, I'm going to escort you to the exit. Please don't resist. Allison's hands shot to her wheels and locked them. Her grip was iron-built from 8 years of pushing herself through doorways, up ramps, across gravel, through a world never designed for her body. Take your hands off my chair! Her voice was low, not angry, not pleading. The voice of a woman who had drawn a line and would not move from it. Tony pulled. The chair didn't budge. He pulled again, harder. The rubber wheels scraped against the marble, a sharp, ugly sound that cut across the lobby like a scratch on glass. The couple on the sofa stood up. The wife leaned toward her husband and whispered loud enough to carry. See? This is what happens when they let just anyone walk in. Property values of the brand go right down. Her husband nodded. They picked up their bags and walked toward the elevator without looking back. Brenda folded her arms and smiled. The smile of someone who believed the universe had just confirmed her worldview. Tony, just get her out. I have actual guests to serve. Tony repositioned his hands, braced his feet against the marble floor, and pulled again. This time the brakes slipped. The wheelchair jerked backward 6 inches. Allison's backpack swung and her paperback fell to the floor, pages fanning open against the cold stone. She didn't reach for it. She kept her hands on the wheels. Her arms trembled, not from weakness, but from effort. The muscles in her forearms stood out like cables. These were the arms of a woman who had pulled a wounded soldier through 50 meters of rubble in Helmand province before the IED that took her legs. She did not let go of things. The young man with the phone had moved closer. His live stream had climbed past 400 viewers. Someone had already clipped the first 30 seconds and posted it with the caption, "Luxury hotel throws out black veteran in wheelchair." From the staff hallway behind the elevator bank, a door opened. Howard Bennett stepped out, carrying a ring of master keys and a clipboard. He was halfway across the back corridor before the noise reached him. Raised voices, the scrape of wheels on stone. Something wrong. He turned the corner and stopped. He saw Tony pulling a wheelchair, Brenda arms crossed, smirking. A black woman in a faded black hoodie and faded army jacket, gripping her wheels with white-knuckled hands. Howard's steps slowed. Then they stopped completely. He knew that face. Not from the lobby. From the photograph, the one on the west wall of the locked boardroom at Sterling Grand Corporate in New York. The photograph of a woman in a wheelchair, dark skin, high cheekbones, calm eyes. A brass plate beneath it, Allison Moore, majority stakeholder, 60%. He had seen it hundreds of times. He had dusted the frame himself. The ring of keys slipped from his hand and hit the marble with a sound like a small bell struck in an empty church. His face went white. He turned and ran. Not toward the lobby, toward the manager's office. His shoes slapped against the tile, his breath short, his hands shaking. He nearly collided with a housekeeper pushing a linen cart. He didn't stop. He hit the office door with his shoulder and it swung open. Greg Patterson looked up from his laptop, reading glasses halfway down his nose, a lukewarm coffee at his elbow. "Howard? What the—" "Mr. Patterson." Howard was breathing hard. His voice cracked on the second syllable. "The woman at the front desk. The one Brenda is throwing out right now. Her name is Allison Moore." Greg blinked. Okay, and her photograph is in the boardroom. I've seen it every quarter for 8 years. Howard gripped the edge of the desk with both hands, knuckles white, steadying himself. She owns 60% of this company. She is the majority owner of Sterling Grand Hotels, every branch, including this one, including us. The color drained from Greg Patterson's face the way water drains from a cracked glass. All at once, from every direction. He stood up so fast his chair rolled backward and hit the bookshelf. A framed photo of his family toppled over on the desk. He didn't grab his jacket. He didn't fix his tie. He ran. Greg Patterson ran through the staff corridor like a man whose house was on fire. His tie swung over his shoulder. His reading glasses bounced against his chest. His shoes, Italian leather, the ones he'd bought to celebrate his promotion, slapped against the tile with the rhythm of a man who understood with every step that his career was collapsing in real time. He hit the staff door that opened onto the lobby. It swung wide and banged against the wall. The entire lobby turned. Tony had Allison's wheelchair angled toward the front door, one hand still on the push handle. Allison was gripping her wheels, arms taut, face set. Her paperback lay on the marble floor 5 feet behind her, pages bent. Brenda stood behind the counter with her arms crossed and her chin up, the posture of someone who had won and was waiting for applause. Greg's eyes swept the room. The live-streaming young man near the piano, the frozen bellboy near the luggage storage, the businessman by the window who hadn't turned a page of his newspaper in 10 minutes. And Allison, sitting in her wheelchair, calm, unbroken. Greg's voice came out louder than he had ever spoken in this lobby. It cracked across the marble like a gunshot. "Stop! Everybody stop! Right now!" Tony's hands flew off the wheelchair as if the handles had burned him. Brenda's smile flickered. The young man with the phone took 2 steps closer. Greg crossed the lobby in 6 strides. He stopped directly in front of Allison's wheelchair, breathing hard, sweat beating at his temples, his face a shade of white that the marble floor would have envied. Then he turned to face Brenda and Tony. His voice was shaking, not with anger, with terror. "Do you know who this woman is?" Brenda rolled her eyes. "Some homeless, do you know who this woman is?" Each word landed like a hammer. Brenda closed her mouth. Greg pointed at Allison. "This woman, the woman you called a cripple? The woman you refused to check in? The woman you just tried to drag out of this lobby? This woman owns 60% of Sterling Grand Hotels." Silence. Not the polite silence of a library, the kind of silence that falls over a room when every person in it realizes at exactly the same moment that the world they were standing in 5 seconds ago no longer exists. She owns 60% of every Sterling Grand property in this country, every branch, every floor, every room, every desk. Greg's voice was climbing, cracking at the edges. "The woman who signs the checks that pay your salary, both of your salaries, you just told her to roll herself out the door." Brenda's hands dropped to her sides. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. The red lipstick that had framed every insult, every cruel word for the past 20 minutes, suddenly looked like a wound on her face. Her legs began to shake. First the left knee, then the right. She reached behind her for the counter, found the edge, and held on like it was the last solid thing in her world. Tony took 3 steps backward. His face had gone the color of old concrete. His hands, the hands that had gripped Allison's wheelchair and pulled, hung at his sides like they no longer belonged to him. He stared at Allison with the expression of a man watching his future walk out the door. The couple who had whispered about property values were nowhere to be seen. They had vanished into the elevator the moment Greg's voice split the air. The young man's live stream had crossed 2,000 viewers. The comments were a waterfall of outrage. In the center of it all, Allison Moore sat in her wheelchair. She hadn't moved. Her hands rested on her lap, one over the other, the same way they had rested since the moment she first asked for a manager. The only thing that had changed was the room around her. She looked at Brenda for a long moment, then she spoke quietly, clearly, without any of the venom that Brenda had poured into every sentence. "You didn't need anyone to tell you who I was. You just needed to do your job." Brenda's eyes filled. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. I didn't. No one told me. I didn't know. That's the point, Allison said. You shouldn't need to know who someone is to treat them like a person. Greg stepped forward, his head already bowing, hands clasped in front of him. Ms. Moore, I cannot express how deeply sorry I am. This is beyond unacceptable. This should never have happened under my watch. I take full responsibility. Allison looked at him. Her gaze was steady, not forgiving, not cruel, assessing. Full responsibility includes knowing who you hire, Mr. Patterson, and how they treat people when no one important is watching. The words landed softly, but they hit harder than anything Brenda had said all morning. Howard Bennett appeared at the edge of the lobby. He walked forward and stopped beside Allison's wheelchair. Ms. Moore, your suite is ready. May I escort you? Allison nodded. One small nod, the kind that closes a chapter. Howard took hold of the wheelchair handles, gently the way you'd pick up something precious, and pushed Allison across the lobby toward the elevator. Every eye in the room followed them. The sound of the wheels, smooth now, unhurried, unforced, was the only sound in Sterling Grand Savannah. Brenda stood behind the counter, mascara beginning to streak, one hand gripping the edge as though the floor might open beneath her. It already had. 30 minutes after Allison Moore disappeared into the elevator, Brenda Crawford sat in Greg Patterson's office. The room was small. A desk, 2 chairs, a window that looked out onto the staff parking lot. The framed photo of Greg's family, the one that had toppled when he shoved his chair back, was still face down on the desk. Nobody had picked it up. Brenda sat in the chair across from Greg. Her mascara had dried in dark lines down both cheeks. Her hands were folded in her lap, fingers laced so tightly the knuckles had gone white. The red lipstick was smeared where she had wiped it with the back of her hand. Greg placed a printed incident report on the desk between them. Then he placed a second document next to it. The complaint filed 2 days ago by a Latino guest who said Brenda had refused to acknowledge him for 12 minutes while serving white guests who arrived after him. I didn't know, Brenda said. Her voice was hoarse. Nobody told me who she was. How was I supposed to? Stop. Greg's voice was quiet, but the word filled the room. You didn't know she owned the hotel, that's correct, but let me ask you something. He tapped the complaint form. Did you know this guest was Latino when you ignored him for 12 minutes? Brenda's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Did you know Allison Moore was black when you told her this place wasn't for people like her? Silence. You knew exactly what you were doing. The only thing you didn't know was that it would cost you. Greg leaned back. You are suspended immediately. Your badge, your locker key, your parking pass, leave them on this desk. A formal termination review will follow within 48 hours. Brenda stood. Her legs were unsteady. She unclipped her badge and set it down with a small click. The locker key followed. Then the parking pass. 3 small objects on a wide desk, everything she had earned in 3 days surrendered in 30 seconds. She walked to the door, stopped, and turned. Mr. Patterson, I'm sorry, You're sorry you got caught, Brenda. There's a difference. Greg didn't look up. Close the door on your way out. The door clicked shut. 20 minutes later, Tony Wells sat in the same chair. He looked different than he had in the lobby. Smaller. The broad shoulders that had filled his security uniform were pulled inward as though his body was trying to take up as little space as possible. I didn't check, he said before Greg could speak. She told me there was a reservation. She told me Brenda hadn't looked it up. I didn't verify. I just went along with what Brenda said. Greg nodded slowly. Why? Tony was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I should have checked. I knew something felt wrong. The way Brenda was talking, that wasn't how you talk about a guest. That was how you talk about someone you've already decided doesn't belong. He swallowed hard. It would have taken 30 seconds to open the system and type her name. 30 seconds, Greg repeated. Yes, sir, 30 seconds. Greg wrote something on the form. You're suspended pending a full review of security protocols. Someone from corporate will be in touch. Tony stood. At the door, he paused. "I should have checked," he said again. Not to Greg, to the empty hallway, to himself. By the time Tony left the building, the video had already escaped the live stream. The young man near the piano, Carter Ellis, 22, a graduate student staying at the hotel on a research grant, had ended his stream at 4,000 viewers. But the clips had already been ripped, downloaded, and reposted across every platform. The first clip showed Brenda pointing and saying, "People like you." The second showed Tony pulling the wheelchair across the marble. The third, the one that traveled the furthest, showed Greg Patterson's face as he screamed, "She owns 60% of this hotel!" Within 3 hours, the hashtag Sterling Grand Shame was trending in the southeastern United States. Within 6 hours, it was national. Local news stations in Savannah picked it up first, then Atlanta, then the wire services. The comments were a wall of fury. Veterans shared their own stories of being denied service. Wheelchair users posted about hotels that had turned them away. Black travelers described lobbies where they had been followed, questioned, or asked to leave for no reason other than the color of their skin. Sterling Grand Hotel's corporate communications office received 53 media inquiries before the end of the business day. They had no statement prepared, because until that morning they hadn't thought they needed one. 48 hours after the incident, 12 faces filled the screen of a secure video call. The emergency board meeting of Sterling Grand Hotels had been convened at 7 a.m. Eastern, the earliest time zone that would accommodate members from New York, Atlanta, Chicago, and Los Angeles. Nobody complained about the hour. Nobody asked for a reschedule. When the majority stakeholder calls an emergency session, you show up. Allison Moore appeared on screen from her suite at Sterling Grand Savannah. She had not checked out. She had not left. She had stayed in the very hotel where she had been dragged across the marble, and every board member understood exactly what that meant. She was not running from this. She was standing in the middle of it. Her face was composed. Her voice was the same one she had used in the lobby, even measured, unhurried. The voice of someone who had already processed the anger and arrived at something more useful clarity. "What happened at this property 2 days ago was not an isolated incident," she began. "It was a systems failure. Hiring, training, supervision, complaint management, every safeguard that should have prevented this either didn't exist or wasn't working." She shared her screen. A timeline appeared, every event from the moment Brenda was hired without a background check, through the unread Latino guest complaint, to the confrontation in the lobby, to the viral video that had now been viewed over 11 million times across platforms. Brenda Crawford was hired during a staffing rush for this property's opening. No reference check was conducted. If it had been, we would have found that she was terminated from her previous 2 positions for similar conduct, hostility toward guests based on appearance, race, and perceived economic status. A board member from Atlanta leaned toward his camera. "Ms. Moore, with respect, the damage is significant. Our stock is down 4% since yesterday. 3 corporate partners have paused contract renewals pending a public statement. What exactly are you proposing?" "I'm proposing that we stop treating this as a PR crisis and start treating it as what it is, a structural problem." Allison's jaw set. "Here's what I want." She outlined 4 directives. The board listened in complete silence. First, a mandatory anti-discrimination training program for every Sterling Grand employee, front desk, housekeeping, security management, completed before any new hire's first guest interaction. Not a 45-minute online module with a multiple-choice quiz at the end. A full-day in-person session, led by certified diversity and inclusion trainers, with case studies drawn from real incidents, including this one. Second, an independent complaint review system. Every guest complaint involving discrimination would be routed to a third-party oversight firm, rather than handled internally by the same managers who might have contributed to the problem. No more complaints getting buried in a manager's inbox because someone was too busy with a grand opening. Third, enhanced background screening for all new hires across every property, employment history verification, reference checks, a standardized interview protocol that included scenario-based questions about serving diverse guests. Fourth, Audio-enabled security cameras in all guest-facing areas, lobbies, front desks, concierge stations, restaurant host stands. Not hidden, visible. A reminder that every interaction was observed and every guest deserved the same standard of respect. The board voted unanimously on all 4 measures. No abstentions, no discussion. 3 days later, Brenda Crawford's termination was made official. Sterling Grand's legal team, acting on Allison's direction, filed a civil complaint against Brenda for violations of the Americans with Disabilities Act and Title II of the Civil Rights Act. The complaint alleged racial discrimination and disability-based harassment against a paying guest on commercial property. Brenda received the notice at her apartment. She read it sitting on the edge of her bed, still wearing the same Sterling Grand polo she had worn home on the day of her suspension. She hadn't done laundry since. The apartment smelled like takeout containers and stale coffee. She couldn't afford a lawyer. Her savings account held $1,100. The mediation that followed was brief. Under the settlement agreement, Brenda was required to issue a public written apology posted on Sterling Grand's website and shared with every media outlet that had covered the story. She was required to complete 200 hours of community service with a veterans support organization, and the incident would be permanently recorded in her employment file, available to any future employer who requested references. The apology was published on a Tuesday. It was 4 paragraphs long. It used the word sorry 3 times and the word wrong once. It read like something written by a person who was beginning, slowly, painfully, reluctantly, to understand what she had done. Greg Patterson's reckoning came the following week. The board's investigation revealed that the Latino guest's complaint had sat in Greg's email inbox for 46 hours, marked as read but never acted upon. It also revealed that Greg had fast-tracked Brenda's hiring to fill a staffing gap, bypassing the standard 2-reference requirement and skipping the background check entirely. Greg was demoted from general manager to assistant operations manager. His salary was reduced by 30%. His corner office was reassigned. He was moved to an interior desk near the supply closet. When Howard Bennett delivered the news, Greg sat quietly for a long time. Then he said something Howard didn't expect. "I earned this." His voice was steady, not bitter, resigned. Every bit of it. If I had read that complaint, if I had checked her references, if I had done my job, none of this happens. Brenda never gets hired. Allison never gets humiliated. The video never goes online. He rubbed his face with both hands. I was lazy, and a woman in a wheelchair paid the price. The reforms rolled out across all Sterling Grand properties within 90 days. Allison personally funded the creation of a new initiative, Wheels of Dignity, a nonprofit legal aid fund providing free representation to disabled veterans who experience discrimination in public accommodations, hotels, restaurants, airports, government offices, anywhere a person in a wheelchair was told in words or actions that they didn't belong. The announcement was made through a joint press release with the Disabled American Veterans Organization. The photograph that accompanied it showed Allison in her wheelchair in the lobby of Sterling Grand Savannah, in front of the marble desk where Brenda Crawford had told her she was nothing. She was smiling. Not the smile of victory. The smile of someone who had taken the worst moment of her week and turned it into something that would outlast her. 6 months later, the lobby of Sterling Grand Savannah looked exactly the same. Marble floors gleaming under the chandeliers, white lilies in their crystal vase on the front desk. The grand piano polished to a mirror shine in the corner. The elevator doors opening with a soft chime. But behind the front desk, a small brass plaque had been mounted on the wall no larger than a paperback novel. It read, "Every guest deserves dignity, no exceptions." Howard Bennett had chosen the words himself. He was still head of guest services at Sterling Grand Savannah. He'd been offered a promotion to the New York flagship, bigger title, bigger salary, bigger city. He turned it down. He said he wasn't finished here. He said there was still a culture to build from the ground up. Every new hire at the Savannah property sat with Howard on their first day. He didn't use PowerPoints. He didn't hand out manuals. He told a story. He told it simply, without names, without drama. A woman came to check in. She was turned away because of how she looked. She turned out to be the owner of the entire company. He never said Allison's name. He never said Brenda's. He didn't have to. By the time he finished, every new employee understood the same thing. The person in front of you is a person first. Everything else, the clothes, the chair, the skin, the accent, is noise. And noise is not your job. On a Tuesday morning, a black woman in a motorized wheelchair rolled through the front doors. She wore a denim jacket and sneakers. She carried a small overnight bag on her lap. She looked tired from a long drive. The new receptionist, Audrey Collins, 24, hired 2 months ago, trained by Howard on day 1, looked up from her screen, smiled, and stood. "Welcome to Sterling Grand. How may I help you today?" The guest smiled back. "I have a reservation. Last name is Porter." Audrey typed the name, found it in 3 seconds, printed the key cards, offered directions to the room, the restaurant, the pool, asked if she needed any accessibility accommodations. The guest thanked her and rolled toward the elevator. Normal, unremarkable, the way it should have been all along. Howard watched from across the lobby. He didn't say anything, he just nodded once to himself. Then he went back to his clipboard. 400 miles north, in her penthouse apartment in New York City, Allison Moore sat by the window in her wheelchair. On her desk, a folder lay open. The quarterly report from Wheels of Dignity. In 6 months, the fund had provided legal representation to 23 disabled veterans in discrimination cases across 9 states. 14 cases had resulted in settlements or policy changes. 3 were still in mediation. 6 had been referred to the Department of Justice for federal review. 23 people who had served their country and been told they didn't belong. 23 people who now had someone in their corner. Her phone buzzed. A text from Howard. "Savannah just scored highest in guest satisfaction across all properties this quarter. Thought you'd want to know." She read it twice, set the phone down and looked out the window. She didn't smile the way people smile when they win. She smiled the way people smile when something broken starts to heal slowly, unevenly, with no guarantee the scar won't show. But healing all the same. On a retail floor in a strip mall outside Savannah, Brenda Crawford straightened a rack of discounted blouses. Her name tag said sales associate. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail, no gel nails, no red lipstick. The public apology 4 paragraphs court-mandated posted on Sterling Grand's website was still online. It would always be online. A customer walked in. An older woman leaning on a cane. Brenda looked up. She stood. She walked over. "Good morning. Can I help you find anything today?" She didn't scan the woman's clothes first. She didn't assess the cane. She didn't calculate whether this person was worth her time. She had learned what that calculation costs. Have you ever been judged before you even opened your mouth? Have you ever walked into a room and felt every eye decide who you were before you said a single word? What did you do? And what do you wish you'd done? Drop your story in the comments. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And if you haven't already, subscribe, because we're not done telling these stories, not even close. Hashtag Justice for Allison, hashtag Wheels of Dignity, hashtag Sterling Grand, shame, hashtag Never Judge a Book. Because the thing about dignity is it doesn't come with a price tag. And the people who forget that always end up paying the most.